What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be diving right back into 90 Day Fiancé. We're on season 11. It's been about a month or so since I posted my last video, so a lot has transpired since, and I was like, you know what? We're like overdue for a video, so let's get right into it. First off, we got Stevie and Maddie. So we kind of left off with Maddie not really feeling comfortable about Stevie's paintings of specifically nude women. He just wasn't really comfortable with the idea. And I'm guessing that because she had so many paintings in her house, it kind of made him like really question what is going on here. Does she actually like women, or is this just something that she just likes to do? She just likes to paint nude female bodies. I don't know. Now, Maddie, when they go to see the venue for the wedding, he meets Stevie's friend for the first time. And that's when it's revealed that Stevie had actually painted her nude before. And he was like, you didn't tell me that. So now it's hella awkward, and even the friend's just like, I don't even know what to say because, you know, I don't want to get in between y'all, and also this is the first time you're meeting me. And Stevie still kind of refuses to really answer the whole bisexual question from Maddie. She keeps getting upset about it, and then she doesn't really say anything further. She's just like, you know what, no, like if that's the answer that you want, then it's no. And it's just like, no, is that how you feel for real? Like, he wants to know what the answer is here. Like, you need to stop playing. But eventually they go over, or back to New Orleans, I should say, because when he had first arrived, she took him over there as well. So they went to New Orleans, and it was kind of like a joint bachelor/bachelorette party at this burlesque show. But Maddie didn't really know what all that entailed, so that was definitely a surprise for him. And he did not have a good time, y'all. He was like, this is too much for me. His friend Saheed, he'd also come down to New Orleans to celebrate as well with him. I think that was the only friend that he had that was like in the States. Saheed decides to take it upon himself to confront Stevie about what Maddie had said to him about the whole bisexual question, and then also, you know, some of the other issues that they've been having in their relationship. And I was like, Maddie, I would not have said that to him right before he like meets Stevie for the first time, I mean. But regardless, that conversation didn't go over so well. You could definitely see that Stevie was getting really uncomfortable trying to figure out like what did Maddie say to him. And then I think this was maybe the next day, we see that Saheed is having another conversation with Maddie about him possibly waiting a little bit longer in terms of getting married. But they already have everything planned in terms of the wedding. And Maddie is just like, you know what? I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think our problems can be worked out after marriage. And I'm just like, you know, I'm not too sure. But after a little more conversing with Saheed, he pretty much decides that he needs a solid answer from Stevie. And Stevie, again, keeps avoiding the question. She's just like, I'm tired. I don't want to talk about this right now. And it's just like, well, when are you going to talk about it? Because it seems as though you keep avoiding the question. Or it's just that you keep getting irritated and, you know, just giving an answer that you think he would like. But it's like, answer the question, you know, like clearly this is something that's really bothering him. And she's like, oh, I don't understand why it's bothering you. And I'm like, does it matter though? Like, just answer the dang question. Next, we move on to Mark and Mina. So Mina actually ends up meeting Mark's old friend, who tells her about his past relationship with his ex-girlfriend Jade right before he had met her. And Mina ends up meeting Jade. They meet up, they have dinner, and she pretty much kind of offloads on Jade what's been going on with Mark's family. And even Jade speaks to the camera and she's like, listen, Mark's family is hard to get along with. I thought it was just maybe they didn't like Mina, but it seems as though this is a consistent thing with Mark's family. Like, they just don't seem to like his girlfriends. Mina wants Mark to put a clause in the prenup for him to adopt her son Clayton. So in order for her to feel comfortable signing that prenup, she was like, listen, I want you to adopt Clayton. But then she finds out that he was gonna adopt Clayton anyway, and they have their little emotional moment until they find out that Clayton, who's still stuck back in France, is not going to be coming over for the wedding. He's not going to be able to make it in time because something's still going on with his passport. So Mina is literally having a breakdown. She's like, this is a few days before the wedding. I really want him here. this is really bad news. And now she has to basically tell her child that, hey, you have to wait a little bit longer. And it's just like, how do you explain that to him? So it just really sucks overall, but you could see that she's really upset, and she was actually thinking about calling off the whole wedding, but I don't think they actually went ahead with doing that. But in that moment, in that episode, that very last episode that I saw, she was like a wreck. But let's move on to Matt, Amani, and Annie. So Amani tells Matt about Annie, basically saying to her that she liked her more than Matt. So Amani sends Matt and Annie on a date because she could sense that things were a little tense, and Matt definitely took offense to Annie saying that she wasn't really as interested in him. But again, with the throuple situation, it kind of is like that though. It's like you're gonna have moments where you're developing a stronger relationship with that other person, so it's just like I don't know what to say here. But regardless, Amani sends them on a date. They have a good time. They talk through their issues. But then we find out after Amani and Matt meet up with Annie's ex-boyfriend that her name isn't actually Annie. It's actually Brenda. Yeah, crazy. But Matt and Amani, they're considering breaking things off with Annie because they're like, oh, you're being untruthful to us. You're not telling us the whole truth about your life. We don't know if we could trust you, all that. That's when Annie finally sits down, has a conversation with them, tells them about her past and how she was in this really bad relationship. And also it was physically abusive as well. So obviously she had to get her paperwork straight in terms of a divorce and whatnot. It's kind of hard to do that when one party doesn't want to actually like amicably end things. They finally get to Annie and Brenda's family to speak to them about the throuple situation, but you could see that she really just wants her aunt to be accepting of the situation. And I'm super surprised that by the end of that episode that the auntie's like, you know what, if you're happy, I'm happy for you. You have my blessing. So I'm like, all right. It seems as though we passed the hurdle, or at least one of the major hurdles. So we'll see how this goes. Let's move on to Gregory and Joan. So Greg finally gets a job after a lot of tension between him and Joan. You could see Joan was getting on him. She was like, listen, if you don't get a job, if you don't buckle down, I'm going to have to go back to Uganda. Okay, I don't even know if we're going to be getting married. I just know I'm going to be going back to Uganda. I know that for sure. So eventually Greg gets it together. He gets a job. They celebrate in New York. Then we find out that Greg's mom, Lucille, and his dad are now paying for the wedding. So that's one major thing that they don't have to really worry about. But Joan has her wedding dress fitting without Lucille, and she does feel kind of left out. But things still seem to be going pretty smoothly. But because Greg's parents agree to pay for the wedding, it frees up some money for him to actually pay Joan's dowry, which is $3,000. So they're good on that. Now, Joan, she has her bachelorette party, and it's kind of awkward because Lucille ends up going with her along with Greg's friends to a strip club. And it's just like, okay, I'm gonna wait to see how you react. And it seems as though she was having a good time and enjoying herself. So it allowed Joan to kind of feel a little bit more relaxed in that moment. So she had a good time as well, it seems. But for their rehearsal dinner, I thought this was so thoughtful. But Gregory had some, I think they might have been Ugandan dancers specifically, but I'm just gonna say African dancers and music because I'm not entirely sure if they were specifically from Uganda or not. But I thought he did an excellent job with that. You could definitely see her light up as soon as they come in, and she's just really enjoying herself. Now, Greg, unfortunately, on the day of their wedding, realizes that he didn't actually say on the wedding invitations to come a little ahead of time. Like, usually there's supposed to be an arrival time and then there's an actual start time for the ceremony, but he basically just put, the ceremony time. So it's like, okay, now you're probably gonna have guests walking in the same time as the ceremony is supposed to start. So yeah, Greg is definitely on edge. He starts sending out mass text messages to ask people to arrive a little while before, but there's no telling what could happen at this point. Next, we have Shekinah and Sarper. I honestly don't even know where to start with them, but Sarper finally meets Shekinah's daughter in person, it doesn't really go so well, not because it has anything to do with Sarper, but more so because of what they decided to do. They decided to go whale watching, and the boat was moving around, everyone's getting seasick, and it was not a good time. But even still, it seems as though the daughter was like very open to giving Sarper like a second chance, because she had heard a lot of things, a lot of negative things with regards to how he treated some of the family members. Now that we got that out the way, Shekinah and Sarper shortly after this end up having a pretty big fight. Sarper, I think he just is really homesick, and I guess every little thing that Shekinah is doing is kind of getting to him and making him a little irritated. So he just kind of exploded on her, is how it sounds. But Sarper didn't really say anything otherwise, so that's just the story that I'm gonna go with. But they seem to reconcile, and after the fight, Sarper, he kind of thinks that Shekinah would be the one that would be distraught if he was the one to leave. He basically says Shekinah would cry forever for him, is what I think he said. And I was like, Sarper, this is not an apology. You were the one that blew up on Shekinah, it sounds like, anyways, but we move on from that situation, and Sarper now decides he wants to do stand-up comedy. Why? I don't really know, because he's not funny, like, at all, and the jokes were really, really bad. But one thing that did stand out was when he decided to call out Shekinah's friend Dan, because him and Dan don't have the best relationship. Sarper tries to make things right with Dan for Shekinah, but things are still pretty tense, even though they seem to be on a better footing. Now, Shekinah's daughter decides to give her blessing for their relationship, so Shekinah is on cloud 9 with that, because in the beginning she said that she was going to have to get out of that relationship if her daughter did not approve of Sarper, even though she had already brought him to the US and had him living in her apartment and was about to get married to this man. So I'm like, okay, Shekinah, sure. So now that they seem to be on a better wavelength, Sarper and Shekinah end up going to the tattoo shop, and Sarper gets Shekinah's lips tattooed on his neck, which I think looks kind of trashy, but if you like it, then whatever. But I really could have done without that. I just think that looks so weird on his neck. But now we see a little bit later on that Sarper and Shekinah are explaining to her friends their wedding plans. They want to do like a bedding, is what I think they call it. They want to get married in bed, which I don't think that's a thing, but you know, I guess you could do whatever you want. So after that is explained, we get the prenup drama, because one of Shekinah's friends decides to ask her about, are you gonna have him sign a prenup? Like, what's going on with that? And you could clearly see that Shekinah never thought about that. So Sarper decides to jump in. He's just like, you know what, if you're gonna spring that up on me, I want you to put a clause in this document basically stating that you have to be or reach the goal weight that I set for you, which is 128 pounds. And every year that she isn't that weight, she would have to pay a penalty fee of $1,000. But I don't have to explain to you how ridiculous that sounds. I think you could listen to that and be like, what the heck is this man talking about? But now we reach the day either before or of their wedding, and Sarper pretty much disappears. And it seems as though he's been having cold feet because of his past situation. He was married before, and it did not go so well. So again, there's another couple that we'll have to just see and wait and try to figure out what the heck's gonna happen next. So next we have Shawn and Alliyah. So Alliyah is getting more interested in moving forward with transitioning, and Shawn is getting very nervous about all that because he doesn't want to see her fully transition. He's just really uncomfortable with the idea. So Shawn decides to take it upon himself to present Alliyah with a prenup. He says he's trying to protect himself if things go too far with her transitioning. But again, it's like, why are you even getting married? If this is not something you're going to be on board with, why are you getting married, Shawn? Like, this is what I'm trying to understand. But now Alliyah is questioning signing the papers altogether, and I am really questioning why this is even still a relationship. Now they might just have to turn the wedding into a party if Alliyah doesn't sign, and she'll have to go back to Brazil. Now on the day of the wedding, Alliyah signs the prenup. She hands the papers over to Shawn. Shawn's in a good mood, but unfortunately shortly after that, Shawn's mom has a fall, but she still makes it to the wedding on time. However, Alliyah ends up being basically 2 hours late, okay? And Shawn is understandably fuming, okay? He'd been waiting there for 2 hours plus at this point. And Alliyah is just walking out all casual with her friend, like, oh yeah, we have a wedding, don't we? Like, what? See, that's one thing for me when it comes to a wedding. Like, we got to be on time, because not only are you probably paying for a venue, location, caterers, like all these things require a set schedule. Like, timing is important, okay? We have to stick to the schedule. I am just that type of person. When it comes to my future wedding, everything is going to have to be on dang near military time, okay? Punctual. But let's move on to our last couple. We have Jessica and Juan. So they are now planning their wedding. He wants more of his culture represented, he says, but he doesn't really explain further as to what he means. Like how Jessica could bring more of his culture into the wedding details. But anyway, they have their bachelor and bachelorette parties, just a bunch of drinking and some nakedness here and there when it comes to Juan. But Juan tells Jessica at the end of the night about his opportunity to possibly go back to cruise life. And you could see Jessica is highly upset that he's even thinking about this and still trying to figure out why he was even getting messages from his boss to even potentially go back to his old job. Like, what is that about, But it seems as though he pretty much left that door open just in case, which is definitely kind of worrisome, but we're just going to leave that alone for now. So Jessica pretty much gives this man an ultimatum. She was like, the cruise or her. I understand his point of view as well, because he wants to be able to provide for his family, and he also has a big shift in terms of how he's going to live his life being in Wyoming versus on a cruise. It's almost like a high energy space that you're in on the cruise, and then you get to Wyoming and everything's a lot slower and the pace is a lot different and it's not as much to do. And it's like he's struggling trying to figure out how he's going to make this work. But in the end, he says that, he feels as though he's being controlled, but he still chooses Jessica for now, I guess. But now it seems as though the problem is Jessica not knowing Spanish yet. Okay, he claims he won't marry her unless she learns it, but the wedding is only 2 days away. So this is some terrible timing to be saying things like that. I mean, he tells her his feelings about her learning Spanish because obviously they have a kid together. He wants to make sure their kid learns the language. But it's like, 2 days from the wedding, my guy? Really? But that's pretty much all for our couples as of right now. I know that was a lot to unload, but there was a lot of updates. But y'all can let me know your thoughts on this one down in the comments. I'll catch y'all in the next one.